Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everyone, my name is Debbie from NDIS Property Australia, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides, and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. We have a brand new speaker today on the podcast, one of our team members that some of you may have connected with if you do call into the office. Often your first point of contact will be Torren. Torren, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, first time having you on our podcast. Actually, you've been with us quite a while now, so I don't know how we've managed to let you escape without joining us, but today is the day. And really great to have you here in the recording room with us. So what are we talking about today?
So today we'll be discussing DDD in SDA NDIS housing. In the context of specialist disability accommodation, the acronym DDD often stands for Data, Design and Desirability. These pillars are key for ensuring that SDA housing effectively meets the needs of NDIS participants. So let's start with data. SDA-related data is vital for understanding demand availability, supply gaps, and future planning. Data sets include the number of participants living in SDA, those funded and seeking housing, vacancy rates, building types, and geographic trends. The NDIS and NDIA regularly update and publish SDA demand data, which guides market responses and policies for housing development. So Debbie, can you expand on what is important about the data aspect?
Absolutely. Thanks, Torren. Yeah, that's a good brief overview of what data is, but as we have talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, data is so important. It is for anything in life, really. If you're researching a project or you're doing a due diligence on something, you really need to understand the data and where it's coming from. So without clear evidence-based understanding of the demand and the supply of SDA, what types of housing are required, etc., what participants are looking for, people risk building properties that sit vacant or fail to meet participant needs. So why SDA data matters. The demand mapping, it tracks where participants are living now. It tracks where the unmet demand exists and what categories are most requested. The supply analysis, this identifies the current SDA homes, their geographical distribution, occupancy levels and vacancies. Also, it covers whether these homes are older group homes that have been transitioned into the system at inception or whether they are new builds and whether they're going to remain in the system long term. We know the legacy homes are going to be defunded within the coming few years. We know that a lot of the group homes are going to be phased out in Victoria. The group homes that are managed by the Victorian government are going to be phased out at the end of this year. Other states haven't actually put that forward, but this actually impacts hugely on the supply analysis. So it's really important to understand all of those aspects. And future forecasts. This helps to predict long-term needs. For example, shifting demand for maybe more robust housing or fully accessible housing as the high needs NDIS population ages. The NDI's regular SDA data releases do help providers and investors adjust market strategies to meet emerging gaps. But look, it's not perfect. We know that. We've talked about that many times. I'm really happy that the NDIS initiated recently the data project for SDA, which has completed now. I believe it's wrapped up, but we haven't seen any outcomes of that yet. I'm hoping that within the next data release, that we might actually start to see some more really meaningful data come out of that. That's going to give us more clarity really on what participants are looking for, where the real supply is. We know the pipeline information is very iffy at best. So, but understanding, even with what we've got, you can really get a lot of information out of that data. And any investors, developers, providers who understand that data, that supply and demand, are far more likely to build homes that are going to be occupied faster and financially sustainable. So basically, data prevents overconcentration of certain dwelling types in urban centres, while rural or regional areas or needs go unmet. And we've seen what's happened when the massive numbers of builders and spruikers went in and put out to the market regardless of any data that was coming out, and we could see this was happening early on. The oversupply we're faced with in parts of outer Melbourne, southeast Queensland, Adelaide, Perth. So really, data is so uber important, Taren.
Mm-hmm. Now that we've addressed data, let's get into the second D, which is design. The SDA design standards provide detailed design requirements to ensure that new and refurbished SDA dwellings meet participant needs for independence, accessibility, and safety. As many of you may know, there are 4 main SDA design categories. These fit into improved livability, robust, fully accessible, and high physical support. Compliance with the design standard is essential for new SDA dwellings to be certified and enrolled by the NDIA. The design aims to give providers flexibility while ensuring houses are contemporary, accessible, and appropriate for people with complex support needs. So Debbie, tell us a little bit more about the subject of design.
Oh, I could go into a lot more detail about design, and I will. Look, design goes way beyond compliance. While SDA dwellings, we know, must meet the SDA design standards, successful and future-proofed developments need to be built with good design that enables not just accessibility, but independence, adaptability, and long-term viability. I just wanted to touch a little bit more on those 4 categories. As you said, we've got improved livability. Now, this is a design that enhances sensory, cognitive, and wayfinding support for people really with cognitive dysfunction that just need a property that enables them to understand their surrounds a bit better and enables them to live with more independence. Robust is low maintenance and durable housing for participants with complex psychosocial or behavioural needs. So it protects both the participant, the dwelling, as well as support workers. It's designed so that participants who maybe have certain triggers from their environment, those factors are minimised to enable them to live in a better way that supports their improving behaviours. Fully accessible, it features wide circulation spaces, step-free entryways, and interfaces designed for mobility aid use. Essentially, fully accessible is wheelchair accessible, generally for people who are usually wheelchair bound, need extra space, need height adjustable equipment. Maybe they are paraplegic, so they can do quite a bit for themselves, but they still need that accessible housing. And the last one, the top level, high physical support, is basically fully accessible with additional modifications or inclusions such as the provision for ceiling hoists, full automation of doors and windows, assistive technology, and backup power support for life support equipment. So we know that, and the SDA design guidelines are very good in ensuring that all of these things are met. But really, we've got to be talking more about future-proofing. And of course, that means that it's ensuring a dwelling remains relevant and functional for decades, even as the participant needs, technology and standards evolve. So important strategies to increase future-proofing are things like flexible layouts that spaces can adapt to different categories of participant need. For instance, a bedroom designed to accept ceiling hoist later if required. So for fully accessible, you might want to consider actually upgrading it to high physical support, so you've got that provision there. If you've got participants who maybe are in a wheelchair, may have a degenerative condition and potentially will need high physical support accessibility requirements in the future. Assistive technology readiness, so homes that are pre-wired for smart technologies, not just the automation of doors and windows and blinds, but other monitoring systems and environmental controls so that they can be upgraded without invasive renovations in the future. Durability and sustainability, materials and fittings that withstand both everyday use and high demand. So this is quite particular in robust dwellings, and of course that's going to reduce long-term maintenance. The thing I need to note out with robust is the design the design guidelines, I should say, for robust are quite basic. When I mean basic, when you look at the actual purple book, as it's known as, the SDA design guidelines, they it's like they almost got to robust and didn't finish, and that's almost literally what happened. I've been told this by a couple of the architects and assessors that were actually involved, access consultants that were involved in writing the SDA guidelines that were released back in 2019. They need to be a lot more expanded and to cover a lot more bespoke situations that robust participants have. So whilst those guidelines will allow a property to be enrolled if they meet them, they're certainly not necessarily good enough for a lot of robust participants. When we're talking about future-proofing, we also want to be looking at things like energy efficiency for thermal comfort, for lower running costs. So, supporting environmental sustainability and affordability for participants. This is something that is not really in the design guidelines, but, it should be part of, and I think it is becoming more of a thing in housing development in general in Australia. So that really needs to be considered as part of the must-dos rather than just an afterthought if you've got enough money to throw into an SDA development. Again, universal design principles. So even beyond those SDA requirements, design homes with principles of universal access that makes them more adaptable. And this is going to reduce the risk of them becoming obsolete in the future at some level. Locating and designing SDA is also about community integration. So, discrete integration into the neighbourhood. You want it to match with where you're building. We have definitely seen that in all of the properties that have been built out in the new estates, because obviously each of these estates have their design guidelines that must be met. But with the shift really now to developing SDA in the inner and mid-ring cities where you're going to be maybe doing a knockdown rebuild, make sure that it doesn't look like a disability home from the front. You want it to really fit in with the local streetscape, if you like, and be part of the community. And of course, all the other things that we have talked about many times in the past, future-proofing, just smart design, extra living spaces, additional storage areas, additional height adjustable equipment. There's so many little things that can be easily adapted into a good design that make that home far more livable. So really, the difference between a compliant SDA dwelling and a well-designed SDA dwelling can be quite striking. Really interesting that this has not been done more. I can kind of understand the reason why, because there is still such a disconnect between people developing these properties and the people that are going to be living in them, the participants. But really, if participants can be involved, or their support network can be involved in co-designing these properties, so engaging the participants, their families, their occupational therapists in the design process, is going to lead to homes that are far more personalised and user-friendly. We know there's that move away from the large disability institutional style group homes into 1 to 3 participant homes supporting more privacy and dignity. So make sure you do keep that in mind. Also keeping in mind that support funding needs economies of scale to actually make looking after participants work. So a good combination of individual single dwellings, single occupancy dwellings, as well as 2 or 3 participant dwellings. That's the model that is, I think, becoming more common and familiar in the SDA space. People are recognising that smart design is definitely going to achieve far more in the long run. Also, if you do want to look at enabling future upgrades, potentially look at maybe reconfiguring or having the ability to do that, maybe building more sort of hybrid type designs. We've seen hybrids out there that are just useless. When I say a hybrid, something that may meet robust category, but also meet FA or HPS category. So, and when I say meeting both, not just meeting those design guidelines, but really going above and beyond and making a good design that still meets both certification levels. So, it's really about anticipating what needs are going to be in the future and building in that smart design, and as well as integrating flexibility and technology into those developments. So I think that's my big summary of design, Torrin.
Mm-hmm. So that was design. Finally, let's cover our last D we have here, which is desirability. Desirability emphasizes creating SDA homes that are not just compliant, but attractive and suitable for participants' preferences, lifestyles, and social needs. High desirability leads to better participant outcomes, such as stability, well-being, and satisfaction, and improved occupancy for providers. Factors contributing to desirability include location, proximity to amenities, aesthetics, adaptability to future needs, and a home-like atmosphere rather than an institutional feel. So Debbie, can you tell us a bit and give us a better understanding of what it really means by desirability?
Yeah, thanks, Torrin. So desirability is really about making SDA housing not just fit for purpose, a term that's bandied around all the time, but a place where people actually want to live. This is their home. So a purely compliant dwelling might tick the NDIA boxes, but it could still feel clinical, isolating, or hard to maintain long-term occupancy from the investor's perspective. So there is a little bit of kind of overlap with design, but desirability, really, we're talking about what makes this property, be it a good design, also desirable. Big part of that is location. So it needs to be in an area where there is proximity to transport. And you might think, but participants, can't leave the home. Of course they can. Absolutely. If they might be wheelchair bound, but they're able to get out on their own, they need to be able to wheel out of their home, wheel down the street, wheel to the bus stop, get on the accessible bus, wheel down to the train station. They need to be close to shops, healthcare, community opportunities and social areas, social hubs. So whilst we always say, good to be close to hospitals, as long as it's not in a, 20-minute radius from the nearest major hospital. Remember, these participants often have significant health issues, or they'll be visiting hospitals or not for regular therapies. This is really important that they are close to those healthcare centres, as well as everything else that makes their life a bit more normal. So, they don't want to be isolated. Those new estates where we've had hundreds of properties being built, there's nothing around them. Is it any wonder that they're sitting vacant? Now, aesthetics. Homes should look and feel like a home. They should definitely avoid that institution look. Look, I think we're getting that probably quite right. I've seen some amazing designs out there as well that look amazing. But in terms of really, as I said back in the design, blending into the neighbourhood, but it's all about, think about this from the participant's point of view. It's their home. They want to come back into it, feel like a normal person living in their own home that is just like everybody else's. Desirability also, have it more personalised, or the ability to make it more personalised. So for people to bring their own furniture, decorate it, shape their environment more to how they wish. You also want to be balancing safety with dignity. So building features that ensure it feels like a home, especially where we're talking about maybe robust. I've seen some very interesting robust designs that maybe do look a little odd. Also with high physical support properties that have these huge, big, open, bare bathrooms. I know I'm overlapping again with design, but these two really do overlap a lot. But it's making it desirable, not just good design, but desirable design, I guess, is where I'm going with this. And properties that encourage, social participation. So maybe it's a share property. It might be a share house for 3 participants. It might be a house with a villa or granny flat. Having, or it might even be a couple of houses side by side with a fence, but integrating some kind of a social environment where all the participants can socialise and have time with other people. We love apartments, you know that, but we've also heard that often the apartment model can sort of create a bit of an isolation for participants, especially if it's a salt and pepper model where you've got a bunch of SDA units scattered throughout a much larger apartment complex. So that's something to think of as well in the good and making a desirable apartment complex, having common areas, not just for the whole apartment, but, specifically that are accessible and designed for SDA tenants in mind. So, really why desirability matters. Well, obviously, it's going to firstly attract participants into your home, but it's also going to give them the opportunity to have greater independence, better mental health because they're in a property that they really enjoy being in, and also brings in that stronger community integration, which is so important to assist these participants and feel like they're living a normal life. For providers, a desirable property means that they're likely to have higher tenant stability, fewer vacancies, which makes their business more sustainable in the long run.
So to revisit what we've just covered, can you summarise for our listeners, Debbie, why the DDD approach matters?
Yeah, sure. So obviously the SDA sector operates at the intersection of policy, property development, disability support, as well as participant empowerment. So the DDD framework really ensures balance. So making sure that data-driven decisions prevent mismatch between supply and demand. That hasn't happened much in the past, but we need that to be really happening majorly moving forward. That design excellence produces flexible, accessible and future-proofed housing that meets evolving standards. We know the SDA design guidelines are going to be upgraded sometime soon, or updated, I should say. And desirability, which ensures that the housing is not only functional, but life-enhancing. And this is going to give participants real choice and stability and turn what is just a rental property into their home. So essentially, if you can sort of apply the 3Ds concept meaningfully, this can transform SDA from a compliance exercise into development that really supports genuine choice and control, and it turns bricks and mortar into the foundation for dignity, independence and belonging for NDIS participants. At the end of the day, it's all about making a development, making a house for the participants to turn into their home, their forever home. And from an investor, obviously, this needs to work for you to have a successful investment on your hands. So I think that's it, Torrin. Did you have any thoughts to add to this?
I think you summarised it pretty well. Very happy to be on here, and it's been a great opportunity. And yeah.
Yeah, well, look, Torrin, you've been with us a while now, and I'm sure that you've learned I know you've learned so much about this world. And yeah, well, next time we'll have you contributing more, I think, of your own knowledge that you've picked up. So anyway, I hope that you guys got something out of this today. You've probably heard us talk about DDD before, design, data and desirability, and that's a real, I think, good summary of what it really means and what we're talking about. So thank you for listening. Thanks, Torrin. And until then, it is goodbye.
Goodbye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.